Hi folks, this is Darren with My RV Works, and today we're in Port Angeles, Washington, and we got the beautiful bay back over there. It's just a beautiful day. This is our summer. It's like 75 degrees. But anyway, we're not here for the weather report. We're working on a Schwintek slide room. So if the Schwintek was bought by Lippert, it's called their in-wall slide room. You're going to become very intimate with how that works here pretty soon. So what the customer states is he was bringing his slide room in and it was not moving and it got kind of cattywampus on him. And so he called LCI and talked to the folks there, and they were telling him the bypass positions and things like that. So then we get called in because there's a problem with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring him inside of his coach, and we've already started to work with it. And then as we were working with this, we decided, hey, let's make a video of this because it'll add value to you. So let's go inside the coach, and what we're going to do is show you some of where the controls are, how they work, and what we're doing to troubleshoot this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we've moved inside of the coach. Now this is a class, it's like a B+, okay, but the Schwintek system still works the same. Doesn't matter if it's in a Class A, a Class B, a Class C, a fifth wheel, or a travel trailer. It's the same kind of a concept. They're all gonna have a control module like this. They're gonna have motors. Now what I'll do at the end of this video, I've got an entire Schwintek rack in my shop. And so at the end of this video, basically what I'll do is I'll bring you into my shop and I'll break that thing out and I'll show you what these things look like when they're not on the wall. Some of the biggest challenges people have with these systems is you can't see them. They're invisible, they're in the wall. But so at the end of the video, the video will cut from here, and all of a sudden you're in my shop like, how'd that happen? Hey, it's the magic of film editing. So we'll show you all those. But anyway, it starts with this control module. Schwintek has two motors. So if this is our slide room, there's one little motor up there and there's one little motor over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to magically make a motor disappear. So everybody say abracadabra. Okay, so just like that, I pulled this motor right out of thin air. Isn't that amazing? So this is basically your little Schwintek motor. Okay, they're going to have black caps and clear caps. It's a 300-to-1 or a 500-to-1 motor. So if you're going to order the motors, make sure you get the right cap size. Some of them the stickers have pulled off, and if you have an older system, they even have different drive shafts on them. And some of them, they even look different. They've gone through several different revisions of what the motors look like, but this is what they look like today. The biggest takeaway from that is make sure it's going to fit in your space that you have, and make sure that if it's a 300-to-1 that you get the 300-to-1, because if we, at a dealership one time, we just found a motor and put it in, and then I got called over when the things were acting strange, and one motor was going faster than the other, and that was a 300-to-1 to a 500-to-1. So black cap or white kind of a opaque cap will tell you the sizes. So basically you have a lot of wires on these motors. Let me talk about the motors for a second. You have a lot of wires on these motors. For troubleshooting purposes, if you need to move your motor, you're going to be concerned with the black and the red. That's what's going to make your motor work, forward and reverse. All these other wires have to do with the sensor that's in it. Okay, now if I can get this black cap off, let me pop this black cap off so you can see what's inside. There we go. Okay, so this is just a little black clear cover. Now when the motor's turning, it's basically, these are the two Hall effect sensors that it's saying that sometimes you might get a sensor that's saying, hey, Hall effect sensor's not working. And so as the motor's turning on the other side, this thing's spinning and it's picking this thing up. So each motor has a sensor on the top of it. And what the controller here is doing, what this controller is doing, is he's sending power to the motor and he's getting feedback on these wires here. So the black and red is going to the motor, and these wires are ones coming back telling the controller that it's spinning. And so what the controller is going to want to do is see that those pulses coming back to it are synchronized. Okay, so the two motors working together, moving at the same time, same pulses coming into the controller's happy. If a motor is binded or something, then it's not happy, and within a couple revolutions the controller shuts down, and if the controller does shut down, he will give you a code. Okay, so find your controller. This one turned out to be, it was back behind the bed, mounted backwards, so it was actually tucked up in here. If you can come a little closer, I'll jump over on this side. Okay, and so on these controllers, now if we sit here and count the blinks, I'm just going to wait until it goes to a green blink. There's one green blink, and it turns out to be 8 red blinks. One green blink, 8 red blinks. The one green blink tells you that it's motor 1 versus motor 2. If it was motor 2, you'd get 2 green blinks. So 8, we look on the chart, 8 tells us wire short between controller and motor. Okay, so there's a wire short between the controller and the motor on motor 1, so on this lead right here. Now, on mine, I put a little piece of red tape. Let me show you down on this. So you're picking up on the video in the midst of me troubleshooting this thing. So, but that's okay, we'll get you caught up. So this lead, we put red tape on, okay? So that way, as I'm unplugging, I can make sure that the red tape goes with the red tape and I don't get my motor wires mixed up. And then this one, this is the one we're having the problem with because he's motor 1. So when you find these, they're going to be plugged in like that, okay? Now remember, if we want to move the motor, it's the red and the black wire. So if this says I have a problem with the motor short, then I want to own that motor, okay? So let me get myself untangled here. So we know that the problem is isolated to this. The way I wanted to troubleshoot this was, there's several different ways, but I want to own that red and black wire, okay? So I put my little connectors on right here, okay? And then I've got my little famous 10-foot lead that's got the progs in it. Polarity does not matter. It's either going to be clockwise or counterclockwise. So then by this, if I put 12 volts on that motor right there, are I not energizing my motor to turn? Okay, so then I've got a battery pack, jump box, okay? And then this is the other end of my wire. And by touching the alligator clips here, I'm sending 12 volts to this, making the motor turn. And what we were able to do with that was we confirmed that the motor's not working. So therefore the motor has faulted out, it's grounded out, it's doing everything the controller said was the problem, okay? So then we compare that to this other motor here. So we basically repeated the test to this motor. This black wire works its way over to the motor. And we got good results. The motor did in fact turn. So therefore we knew that if we put 12 volts in and if the motor was good, then the motor would work, okay? So all I did by doing that is I'm confirming in the real world that the controller is not faulted, that what the controller is saying is a problem is in fact the problem. I don't want to assume that I trust the controller has never steered me wrong, but I need to prove that the problem is what the controller thinks it is. What if the problem was that the controller has faulted out and there really never is anything wrong with the motor? And so that's why I wanted to unplug it. I want to own the motor, I want to own the 12 volts, and I want to test that motor the way that I want to send 12 volts to that motor. So does that make sense? We're following the trail, okay? So the rest of this controller, this is where the power is going to be connected with the plus and minus 12 volts. And then these two wires down here are going to go to the wall switch, and this RV, the wall switch is right here. So if I rocker these switches back and forth, they're sending power into these wires, and this is my control wire. So these controllers are really not that complicated. 12 volts coming in from here, you're going to go upstream and find the fuse. These two wires are going to go to my switch, and then you have two motor leads. If you're going to unplug your wires, do yourself a favor and tape them or color code them or do something so you know when you're putting it all back together again, which one's motor 1 and which one's motor 2. Okay? So now that we have owned the motor, if you will, the controller's probably fine, okay? And now we've done our test on our motors. We have become the controller at this point, and I put my little taps in here. Oh, we got lighting. Thank you, sir. We put our taps in here, and what this does is now I own the motor, and I put a known good 12 volts in it, which I use my jump box for. One motor worked, one motor didn't. So at that point, we've confirmed the problem was with the motor, not with the controller. So now we can move on. So now we're following the trail on the wire without the red tape, and it's this motor back behind me, okay? So all we've done at this point is basically gained access to the controller, brought it out, tested our motors to confirm that what the controller is telling us is in fact a true statement. So if it's saying that 8 says that there's a wire short, okay? Motor's over here. So now I'm going to connect it here. Is the short between the wire from the controller to the motor, or is the problem between this connection and the motor itself? So what we did earlier was we verified the problem is not in the little wire that goes from the controller to here, okay? So now when I take my little test jig that I made, so you just take an old harness, you don't have to do this, but this is what I do. I take an old harness because this is the other end of this, and all I'm after is the red and black wires, okay? All the other wires are cut off in there. I don't care about those. So then this plugs directly into the motor, okay? And so now I own this motor, don't I? And we know that that harness is good. We already tested that harness. There's no problems in the harness. So this wire short that they're talking about is not between the controller and this connection. And so we put a known good 12 volts here, and the motor still did not work, okay? So now we know that the problem is not as easy as we were hoping with the controller to the wire here, because that would have been a super easy fix. So now we know that the motor is in the wire. Okay, so did you understand how I kind of follow the trail from, we've confirmed that the controller is not lying to us. That's a good sign. And we've now followed the trail of 12 volts up to this point. So at this point, the other end of this goes directly into the motor, doesn't it? Okay, so we're just following the trail, following the trail, following the trail. We got them on the run, don't we? So the next part of this puzzle was, originally this slide room was about right here. Now, Dakota's not with me today, so if you see my other videos, Dakota's 10 years old, and he can slither right back in here, and he loves it. I love bringing him on these jobs, but he's out with Mom out on the water. We should be on the water. It's a beautiful day. So what you do on your Schwinteks is you unplug the motors, which we've already demonstrated that we've done, and you basically just push on this with the motors unplugged, and you push on your slide room, and the slide room will go out. Okay, I want to repeat. With the motors unplugged, the slide room will go out. You might have to push deep and just really push on this thing, but it'll go out. And it was enough for us to get a little bit of space in here, okay? Now, I need to get to that motor. Now, we already know what a motor looks like because we just demonstrated to you. Now, what I'm going to do is, we'll go to the front and show you where the motors are, because it's just really tight back in here to see it. So let's pan around. I'm going to show you the motors on the inside, but the problem is going to be back here, and we're going to need to go to the outside. When we get to the outside, I'll show you how to get access to this motor. There's a couple different ways to get access to these motors. There's an easy way, there's a hard way, and there's a way that's an impossible way. We'll show you all three. Let me look at something real quick. I'm just going to reach for something, and okay, we'll probably loosen the motor from the outside and pull the motor out from the inside. Okay, so I'm going to put this little cap back on. Now, there we go. So there's our new motor, if it turns out to be that, which I'm thinking it will be. Now, let me come over here. Okay, I'm going to duck down, and you can go over the top of me. So there is our motor. Do you see the motor right there? So we see, I'm going to put this motor right here for now. There we go. So we peek back in here, we see the motor, right? And I can tell right now that he's got that opaque covered top, okay? My motor is black, okay? So I can't put this motor on. I got to go look at my inventory and see if I have the opaque colored one. But you'll see that this motor just fits right in there like that, okay? And then, like I said, at the end of my video, I'm going to basically show you a little bit more up close what these things look like. But these four little screws right here, they're going to fit right in the top. And then this little D-shaped drive shaft thing is going to fit in a collet, and the collet is going to motorize a drive shaft. And if you reach in this wall here, if you get your fingers in there, you'll feel this drive shaft that goes all the way down. Okay, so now to get this motor out, we're going to go on the back side. It's going to be hot and sunny out there, so I'll explain what we're going to do on the inside, then we'll go on the outside and do it. See this little oval slot right here? There's a screw from the outside, and a screw is just going right inside that little window right there, and that's preventing this motor from going up or down. So we're going to go to the outside of this to loosen that screw, take that screw out, and then we'll be able to pop this motor up, and then hopefully with luck, we'll be able to work that motor out. Okay, and when we get that motor out in our hands, we could do another bench test on it to put power on it here to verify, is it the motor or is it the wire that connects to this motor right here and like goes maybe 5 feet. Okay, so that's what we'll do next. We'll go to the outside, we'll take that screw out, we'll pop this motor up and try to get the motor out. So the best case scenario is we take the screw out, pop the motor out, and it comes out here. That's the easy way, okay? But what makes that difficult is, let's say that there's a pantry wall right here. I have been in RVs where there's a pantry wall. You cannot get to this point. So even though you get to your screw on the outside and you pop your motor up, you cannot get to this opening. There's just physically no way to get here. And even if you were to push your slide room out, now this fascia is blocking you. So you have to take your motor out from the outside. That's a little bit more difficult. And I'll show you how to do that. I don't know. We might need to do that on this job, or we might not. Hopefully we could just loosen the screw and pop the motor out from this side. So that's best case scenario. Okay, so that's where we're gonna go next, is outside. Okay, so we've climbed up on a ladder on the outside. Now we're back in that back corner, which was really hard to get to. And now we're on the outside. Now this room was closed quite a bit, and we had to actually push it out to give us a little bit of space. You are going to need to get a little bit of a space because right up in here, there's that screw right there, okay? Not to be confused with these screws here or this rivet. You go, here's your track, you go above the track about the height of a motor, okay? And there's a screw right there. And that's what we're after. We're after that screw right there. Now I've got a right angle bit because I want to make sure I get in there. And, okay. He's stripped a little bit, so let's try to get that out again. Okay, so, okay, got him at the base of the ladder. So now I've taken that screw out. So the purpose of that screw is to hold the motor. So now that the screw is out, we should be able to go back on the inside, which is going to be really hard to get to, but pop that motor out. Okay. Now what we might need to do is kind of manually push the room back out a little bit more because my arms aren't that long. And we'll clean this up a little bit right here too. Now pan back just a little bit. I want to see these screws right here. Okay. Now so there's a screw here, a screw here, a screw here, all the way down. Some manufacturers are putting in rivets. So if you're a manufacturer putting in rivets, please stop doing that. I know it's probably a lot quicker, but out in the field, you're killing us with your rivets. We need screws. Because if you need to access this for any reason, we might need to do that on this job just because we can't get to it. We need to take all these screws off, and you're only ever going to do one side at a time, and you'll never do this when the room is fully extended, and you do need to support your room so it doesn't fall. But you'll take all these screws out and pull this H-column out. That's what they're calling this, an H-column, and your motor's going to sit right there. So that's the other way to get the motor out, and we might need to do that on this job. I don't know. It depends on how much we can access the inside. So best case scenario, we take our screw out and we can pop the motor up, take a screwdriver and just kind of get in there and pop it up, and we'll take it out from the inside. Worst case, or not worse, it's just a different case, is we've got to come back out here and take all these screws off, and then this H harness comes out and we can pull the motor out the top that way. Okay, so we don't know which way this one's going to go, but that's what you might run into on these two jobs. Okay folks, so now we're on the inside. I've got my screwdriver. Let me show you where I'm going to put this thing. So I got the little wiper right there. Okay, there's my motor. We've already got our screw out, and I'm going to follow it down to right at the base of the motor where it goes into the top, and hopefully my screwdriver is skinny enough to fit in that little slot right there. If not, I'll have to go with the skinnier screwdriver, and there it goes. Okay, so see how the motor's coming up? So we got the motor up now, don't we? Okay, so now we got the motor loosened, and we got lucky on this one. Okay, so now I'm going to try to release this stickiness here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and we're going to pull this down, and that should be our motor right there. Okay, so let me switch arms. Okay, that, you know what, folks? It's possible that may be our problem, maybe not, but this is the other end of the thing, and it plugs into the motor. But we're going to take this out and bench test that motor, make sure it's right. Okay, now if I could just reach in here and grab this thing. It fell back in its spot. And I got my fingers on it. Come on. There we go, got it. Okay, so now you just saw how to pull your Schwintek motor out, but it's still caught on something. There we go, I got the motor in my hand, just like that. So we got lucky. But if we didn't, then we would have taken all the screws out the outside, come in here and taken this bracket off right here, and slid that H harness column out to pull the motor out the top. But we got the motor in our hands through the slot. Some of you are not going to have this cutout right here. And so if you don't have this cutout right here, what we've actually done is I've actually made the cutout and to get the motor out. But some of the manufacturers don't give you this cutout. You have to do that yourself. So now that we got the motor in hand, let's test this motor. Okay. Use this as my bench test. Now, when I started the video, I was talking about the motors and I talked about the black covers and the clear covers. Well, here you see the two covers. Okay. So what I have is a black. I have to look at my inventory, see if I have this opaque colored one. If not, just change the caps. That's a joke. But here, Patrick, get a close up on these two part numbers right there. And I'll rotate them. And you can freeze frame, but there's your two part numbers right there with the black cap and the clear cap. So you see this one says 500-to-1. Does that say 5? Is that a 5? So the clear cap is 500-to-1 and the black cap is 300-to-1. Okay. So hopefully you can make out those two part numbers for your two motors that they have. And you see, other than that, they're identical. Other than that, they attach the same D shape, same this. But they do have some older generation motors that do look a little differently. So be advised on that. So we're not going to use the black cap, but hopefully there's nothing wrong with this. And if there is, we can get in there and fix it. We even might need to do some soldering if it's that, but hopefully it's just this wire. So let's just do a test. So this was the wire, okay, that I was playing with originally. So it was attached up to the motor and we pulled it out over here, remember? And I had put my harness in. So here's my little test jig that I made. So there's my test jig. And all I did was I just took an old harness and cut it. And then I put my little prongs on. If you watch my videos, you know I like to use a little 12-volt battery pack. And so we're going to put this motor back together. They have a little idiot-proof, one side's, this has got an idiot-proof plug, so you can't be too bad with it, okay? And now I'm going to plug this harness in, and we're going to test it, and hopefully it works. Polarity does not matter. There we go. So there your motor's working. So it must have just been a loose connection. So now that we know our motor's working, okay, which it was not before, now what I want to do is test it. Well, I'm going to reach over here. Ha! Okay, so I am going to plug this back into the coach wiring harness that we've already tested, but I want to test it from the controller. So it may have just been, you can see how this thing was pinched. It looks like it had under some stress on it. So it may have been that he was not happy somehow in all these tight connectors and stuff like that. But I looked at this and I do not see any insulation fatigue, anything like that. Okay, so we're going to plug him back in to the RV's wiring harness. Oh, I wish I had a longer arm. Okay, so now I'm connected to the RV wiring. And now we're going to come back full circle. It's the one without the tape. And hopefully it'll work here. So I'm going to take this test lead here, okay? And remember, this is how we all started. We wanted to own this motor. We wanted to test this motor. And we put the caps on it to own it. Okay, so now I'm plugged into the red and black, which is connected to all this, okay? And we never got a fault saying that, okay, so we never got a fault saying there was Hall effect problems, okay? So this is my battery pack is running. And all I'm going to do is just touch these two together. Please work. That would be so wonderful. Here we go. Okay, good. So at the end of the day, we got lucky, folks. All it was is probably a loose connection right here. If it would have been the motor, then what I see a lot of times is the wiring. In other words, I've seen this before, where the screw on the outside, if you remember the screw that we took out on the outside, that would have not been in there, they didn't put it back in or whatever, and in the traveling down the road, the motor's not binded, and he finds a loose spot, and he just jumps out a little bit, and he doesn't seat himself in these little screw sockets which kind of hold into the top, okay? And so now we start turning, and so here you're gonna go camping and everything, and then you go to run your slider mount, and the motor starts to twist around itself, and when it twists around itself, that's where these wires get hurt. So if that's what happens, you may not need a motor, okay? Bring a soldering kit with you, and like we talked about, okay, pop the cap off, and just, you could take this, it's just two big solder leads, because at the end of the day, the motor comes out, let me make sure you can see here. If you look in there, I got a silver connector and a silver connector. Unsolder those two pieces and take this thing off, and you can take this on a solder bench and just solder your wires back on there. It does not matter if you have this little white piece. If you have to, just solder your wires right back onto the board. And, you know, beg, borrow, and steal if you have to, and you're really broken in the campground, then, and all that's broken, cut this, skin it back, tin your wires, and then take your wires and solder them right back onto your thing, and forget this piece and forget this piece and get yourself home again. And that might be a forever fix, or at least it'll get you back home. Okay, does that make sense? Because rarely do the motors go bad. It's always this wiring that I've seen chewed up and torn up. But I'll say that I have seen one where water was dripping inside and all this was corroded. So that's also a problem. But yeah, so what we're going to do now is put this all back together again. This is the fun part. Okay, we're going to put this motor back in. Now, the part that really, how's the saying go? Embrace the suck. The part that really is difficult is there's a collet in the top of that thing. Okay, and the collet is oriented with that little flat spot on it. So I want to put my motor in with my wires aiming not towards the wall. I want them out here. So I want to put my motor in so that my wires are where I want them to be, but the collet is rarely where I want the collet to be. So you're spinning around trying to find them to drop in, okay? But you don't want them to drop in when the wires are all against the wall. You want them to drop in, really you want the wires to drop in about in that orientation. You're limited by where these are, so this is going to be squared up. So it's either going to be that way, or that way, or that way. But I usually try to avoid the wall. Okay, I want to stick them out here. And then when I get in there, that's going to connect. And again, you can see where this thing has been stressed. You can see, I can see where he's been really pressed right here. You want to get a close-up right on there? I don't know if you can see that, but right in there you can see these wires, how they've been just kind of mashed up against each other, okay? But I don't see, you can actually see a little, I'm not going to say the jacket's cut at this before we're putting it all back in the wall, because what I would hate to do is put it back in the wall and have the problem reveal itself months from now. But you see, if I bend this, you could see these little chew marks where he has been, I don't know, pressed on or something. So what I'm not seeing is the bare wire. So I want to peek inside this wall here to see if there's a sharp edge he went over. Makes sense. Okay, here. Yeah, I do see a little bit of a bare wire right through there. Yeah, I do. So right through this black wire, I am seeing a little, I don't see him anymore, but it looks like he's been being rubbed on for a while. So he's rubbing on an element in the frame of the RV right there. So what I might do, let's see here, folks. I might cut them off and resolder back a little bit just to make sure that that's fine. And if you're the manufacturer of the motor, what I might recommend is please put these in a heat shrink. That would be just wonderful. You know, just put them in a heat shrink, make it a little bit safer, because we see these wires chewed up all the time. But anyway, you don't have to listen to me. I'm just a guy out in the field fixing the stuff. But so yeah, before I put this motor in, I do want to kind of dress that up a little bit better. Even if it's just to do some electrical tape or something, just to make them stronger. I don't see that the wire's broken, but I do see that the insulation is a little compromised right there. Okay, that's a concern of mine. I don't want to put it back in, and I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera angle, but yeah, those marks right through there. That's where the problem was. So what I want to do now is, I don't know if you'll be able to get the camera in here, but I'm just going to run my finger around where this thing was and just see. I'm just going to feel. I'm just feeling around in here. So maybe where my hand is up on this top, I'm not even looking. So I'm just, the camera's in there, but I'm not even looking. So maybe where my finger is up on the top is where he was rubbing right there, or that might be where it was. So maybe up in there somewhere. But so maybe what we'll do is we'll just roll those around with electrical tape just to kind of make them a little bit tougher. And then we'll try to put that motor back in there. Okay. And so yeah, let's do that. So just to make mine. Now, another way this may have failed is, let's just pretend for a second that your motor went out, but it wouldn't come in. And so let's just say if that was your scenario, that the black wire was ground. Let's just play with this for a second. Let's say the black wire was ground, the red wire was the plus, the hot wire, okay? So that means that if the black wire was grounding out to frame, it wouldn't have mattered because the red wire is being energized. So then, therefore, electrons are going through the red wire and they're coming back the black wire, shorting out to frame, everything's fine. But then all of a sudden, you want to come back the other direction, and now the black wire is plus and the red wire is minus. Well, now you're shorting yourself out. That would have given you your fault. That would have made your motor go in one direction but not the other. So you see how the electrons and the polarity all work that way? Again, all these others have to do with Hall effect sensors. And in the very beginning, I was just trying to just put power on the red and black to see if the motor would work, and it didn't. So, and we checked both polarities, so there was a problem there. So I think with this, because the insulation is good, I'm just going to put little flags of electrical tape just to kind of support that insulation. So I'll do that. When we come back, you'll see my beautiful work here. Okay, so what I've determined, looking at this closer, I don't think the wires were shorted to each other. I think they were shorted to the frame itself. That's what it looked like to me. Okay, so what I did was I took some electrical tape. This is the Super 33 Plus electrical tape. It's real springy and spongy and can handle. And I wrapped each individual wire. You take your scissors and you cut and you wrap it around. So next, what I'm going to do, so each individual wire got about 2 wraps of the tape on it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap the whole bundle with this tape here, and just to give it a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? See, if you've watched my videos, you know I don't multitask. You know I've got dyslexia, and I say red to mean green. Love me through it, but I don't even know what I was talking about. So there you go, and I'm just going to cut it, so I don't want to put any stress on anything. So now we've got a nice, you know, we've made this stronger, more better. Okay, so now we're going to go fight that battle to get this thing plugged in. Now, there is a little bit of trick I'm going to show you. Ready? It's a little bit more of an advanced trick, so get ready for this one, okay? Remember, I want my motor with my wires aiming away from the wall, right? So, I am going to, I'll tell you what, I'm going to connect this to here, okay? You're going to love this. This is going to be so cool. And then I'm going to unplug this. So now I've just got a longer pigtail. Now, not all of you are going to have this extra little pigtail. I'm glad that the manufacturer did this. This makes it really, really nice. So if it turns out that you're going to be redoing your slide room, a lot of times what you're going to find is it leaves a controller, and it's like a 30-foot cord, and it goes up the wall, and then it hooks over the top. What this manufacturer did was they give us this nice little jumper, if you will. And so what that does for us is it makes it really nice to be able to own the motor with this much wire. A lot of you, your control module, if you're in like a class A, that control module is going to be downstairs, outside, inside of a basement compartment door. Some of you, these control modules are all over the place. How do you know where to find your control module? It'd be good on a good fair weather day to just get to know your RV. What you're going to want to do then is just turn it on, and you'll hear that noise, and a lot of times you can hear a clicking sound. So on a fair weather day, but when you don't have any emergencies, it'd be good to locate that module. There's another thing on this module I'll mention while it's in my brain so I don't forget. There's a procedure here, how to manually override. And what is it, 6 buttons or 7? 6 times and hold the 7th. Okay, so there's inside here, there's a little push button. Okay, you're going to push them 6 times, hold them the 7th. That's going to put this into manual override mode. And what that translates into for us is when you push your rocker switch in your house, it's only going to come in, period. Okay, another trick on these things is if it is not coming, then you can rock it in and out, in and out. So you're going to basically, you might get 2 inches at a time, but I've actually brought in an entire slide room going like 1 inch at a time. And the procedure there is I'll just use this switch right here because this is the switch. Your switches might look different. So I'm going to basically, you need to come in. I'm going to go in. He'll come in like 1 inch and then it'll time out. And I can't push in anymore. It won't do anything. So then I have to go out for a second. I don't want the wall to move a little bit, but you'll hear where he tries to move. And then I go in. Then I get like 1 inch. Okay? I can't go in anymore. So I'm going to bump it out, in. I get another inch. Okay? Out, in. I get another inch. Out, in. And so that's how you can walk them in one at a time, little inch by inch by inch by inch by inch by inch by inch, but eventually it'll get in. These things fail several different ways. It depends on what's failed, but this would be something you would do if it was a shaft encoder fault, okay? Where you can't get to that module, or you can't push your buttons 15 times, or I mean 6 times. So you're just going to rock it in, out, 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 and it'll eventually come in. Because what'll happen is, as long as your motors are good and it's just a shaft encoder fault and you need to get home, then push him in. He'll come in for 1 inch, and then, or as they say in Texas, an inch. I love my Texas brothers, man. I got to give you crap because that's how I learned how to be an RV tech, is in Texas. An inch. Is it an inch or is it pinch? Anyway, so if it's just a shaft encoder fault and you don't know where that module is and it's time to go home, just inch it in, out, in, oh, goes 1 inch, faults out because the shaft encoder's messed up, out, in. So there's your trick there. If you can find this, 6 push buttons, hold the 7th, and the lights will start blinking, and then he'll only come in, he will not go out. And basically what you're doing is you're telling the module, ignore all of the shaft encoders and just send me power going in. Okay, that's what he's saying there. If it's the motor like this, then you unplug your harnesses and you push, 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 push. The thing will go out. Take out your screw, pop this thing out, examine your thing. Now, on this one, the way it failed is the way it was installed was this way. Now, all that is to say, I have a harness. So, remember I said it's hard to get these things aligned? So we're gonna kind of shoot the pier here. I wanna put this motor in the orientation that I want it to be in, with my wires kind of coming out in about the, what is it, the 1 o'clock position. I want them to come into the coach this way. And then I'm gonna bump this with my 12-volt battery pack, turning this shaft, and sooner or later we're going to find that sweet spot, clunk, and he's going to drop back down. So that's what we're going to do. I don't know if we get the camera in that spot, but the chances of this flat spot orienting with that collet, I got a better chance of winning the lottery today. So I'm going to put the motor where I want it to be and just kind of keep some slight pressure down, and I'm going to energize this, and I'll turn, I'll turn, I'll turn, I'll turn, and all of a sudden he's going to drop right where I want him. Make it? All right, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to put my little harness on. If you work on these a lot, invest in making yourself some harnesses. And if you're an RV tech, do yourself a favor and go with 12-volt tools. Okay, so so I can do this right here, right? Ready? There we go. See, that's a 12-volt battery pack, folks. Look at that. Yeehaw! Okay, so I don't think I need a headlight or anything. I'm just going to put this in here. You'll see the little flat spots. I'm going to try to put them right over where I want them to be. I want my wires to come out this orientation, okay? Because coming out this orientation, I don't really have anything that's blocking me, but if I come out the wall, I'm hurting. Okay, so basically, I'm just going to reach this guy back up in here. And of course, this is like impossible to get into. We in? Oh, we got to clear that little shaft there. Now we're in. Okay, so I got to do something and then look. Do something and then look. So now I just want to try to. I'm doing this blind. I'm not even looking because my head's hanging out over on this side. Okay. So now's where I need to bump my motor. I want to make sure my wires are good. Okay, I'm just going to bump that motor. I'm going to push a little bit of down pressure on it. Nope, I just passed it. Just went right by him. So let me reverse it just a little bit. Oh, I was almost there. Okay, I think I may have got him in there. Okay, so let me reverse my direction again. I think I'm close. Okay, so I can feel, let me let my arm rest a little bit. Whew. I can feel as I'm turning that motor, I can feel I'm not aligned perfectly. I'm off just a little bit, but I can feel it where it wants to drop into the collet, okay? And so I've got my battery pack right here. I got one arm stuck up here, pushing a little gentle pressure down on top, and I got my other guy right here, and I'm just going plus and minus. If I need to so one side on my DeWalt is a plus and one side is minus. Let's see here. This is the plus slot and the other extreme is a minus slot. So I'm just reversing polarity. So if I need to turn around, then I'm gonna move this guy over here and I'll go this way, okay? And so that way I'm making the motor go clockwise and counterclockwise, okay? So that's really what we're trying to do here on this. Let me take this flashlight. Oh, this is where Dakota would be perfect. He fits in these spots so well. And I think the collet, I think I might even be in the collet right there. So I want to, and this will rip your finger off if you're not careful. So let me try to move this, well, there it is. Okay, you may have noticed the whole motor just fell right down inside. It just fell right inside. So now the motor's where he wants to be, and I got my wires where I want them to be. They're coming out the side right here, right? And so I'm gonna want them to get away from the slide room. So when I route my wires, I'm gonna come out this way with them, okay? And then when we route our wires, you'll see this little notch that they cut in the top. That's where the wire's gonna enter my little track right there, okay? And then we're gonna come down this track, and there's a D-seal that slides over this, hiding the wires behind the track right there. Okay, so he's gonna look like that when we're all done. And we're just gonna try to stow some of this in there, okay? So now that we're seated You know what let's do before we actually put our screw in? We're not going to be going on the road bumping around, but I want to do a full dress rehearsal on this thing. I'm not going to put my screw in just yet because my motor is seated exactly where I want them. Let's do a dress rehearsal. So what that means to me is I'm going to plug this back into the control module, and we're going to do a full test, okay? And so let's unplug this, and then we know we've succeeded, and it's just a matter of putting everything back together. Let's see here. And okay, so this is the D seal I was talking about, and they call it a D seal because it looks like a D. So where I showed you where that wire comes over that top of that, this will slide in it, and the wire is going to be hidden in this track right here. When we get to that step, we'll probably show you that part. So basically, I'm connected here. We never disconnected over there. That gets molded in right there. So now, let's see what happens now. So, well, gee, which wire connects to which plug? So, oh, there's what's wrong. Okay, so we're going to unplug. Now, I can leave my little crimp caps on here because if anyone ever needs to work on this before, again, they'll understand what's going on here. So red tape. Well, gee, I guess that goes there, huh? Oh, it's upside down, so idiot proof. I guess it makes me an idiot. Okay. Now, here goes the test. Let's go out with it. And it's working, yay! So yeah, the room's kind of going out a little sideways, and that's what I stopped to just verify. I think it's going to be fine. What we're going to do is when this side touches, I'm going to let this side actually touch, and then it'll synchronize itself a little bit. Okay, but before I do all that, I am convinced that we've fixed the problem. We can go in. We're going to come in with it. Okay, and we can go out with it. So at this point here, what I want to do is I want to put that screw back inside of the motor, okay, to keep that motor locked in place. And once we do that, then we'll start dressing everything up, synchronizing the room, and making all those things correct. The other screw, when I took the other screw out, it was kind of stripped. So I went with one size bigger, and I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite, just a dab, okay, because I want to make sure that the screw doesn't pull out, and I'd recommend you guys do that too. It's possible. I don't think that's what happened on this job, but I have gone on jobs where, where am I going to put this tool? Stick it in the pocket. The whole problem was because the screw fell out. Okay, so you owe it to yourself to put some blue Loctite on it. So by going with the bigger gauge, okay, I'm going to be able to cut the new threads and make them bite. So I'm going to go right in there. Okay. And then we'll put some double-sided tape to tape that up. Now, well, gee, Darren, why didn't you put it on the outside? I could have put it on the outside or the inside, but I wanted to go to the inside because I want to make sure that that's going to hold that motor in. And I can't stress how important this screw is, because if the screw should fall out, if it's the wrong size, if it's stripped like the other one, and the screw falls out, then then you're going to have problems with your motor hopping out. I'm not going to say every time, but your motor could pop out and start spinning around as it's trying to turn. And I think you can visualize now that you see how the motors work, those wires just getting wrapped up around there. We've been on too many service calls because of that, all because the screw fell out. So I want to put the screw behind it. I wanted to put some blue Loctite on it. If I were to put the screw through the rubber, then I've got a little bit of rubber bumper going on, rubber baby buggy bumper, okay? Say that real fast. And so I want to make sure I got that bonded down there, okay? This D seal is going to seal to this, and what we'll do is for the customer, we're just going to kind of clean this up since they're up where we got our ladders. We're just going to clean this up. This was a yuckiness that they did at the factory or dealership, and we might tighten the screw. This screw here is a little bit loose, okay? So if I were to take all these screws out, it's these screws here all the way down, and maybe some brackets on the inside that are what's holding this is called the H-column. It's holding the whole H-column in place. So if you ever need to work on this, then take these screws out, and then you might need to get a tool back here to pop that open. Those little red plastic chisels I use are great for getting in there. They're not going to mar your paint. And then you just walk this off. And even on the motor side, your wiring, if you're lucky, I can feel the top of the motor right here. I got my finger on the top of the wiring right here. That's angling over in that corner over there. Okay, so we're pretty much done on the outside, except for some cleanup. And basically, I'm not going to take your time to show me cleaning this up. We're going to do this for this customer, but you don't need to watch me clean this up and tighten these screws. But just know that we're going to clean this up when we do it. Okay, so now we're going to go do a full. Now we're going to go inside, and now that I know that that motor's secure, I've convinced myself that the motor's happy and working. There wasn't anything wrong in the motor. I did check my inventory, and I have both motors in my inventory, so yay, my RV works. We carry all the parts that we need. Maybe because I've done these before, and I needed to know I had to have both motors, right? So we're going to tighten all these up. We're going to go on the inside. We know the motor's good. We know our wiring harness is good. We don't detect any wires broken. It was just some kind of hygiene on the wires because whoever put it in there before was pressing up against that metal thing. Yours might be the same way. And now we're going to dress it up. And so yeah, let's go inside and I'll show you how to synchronize the motor. With this long, so now we're going to see if this really works. Here's the money shot. So we're going to go out with it. Now, you can't see it, but I can see it from standing here. The room is kind of cattywampus. So we're going to kind of go out, and here's how you're going to synchronize this. When you go out all the way, you're going to want the motor to bind itself out and torque itself out, and you'll hear it go, okay, we're actually going to hear that. And we might need to do that a time or two just to kind of, this side's going to touch first, and that side's got maybe 2 or 3 inches to make up. And basically, he's going to stop turning the drive shaft. The shaft encoders are going to stop that, right? And then the thing's going to fault out, saying, I'm not synchronized. And so we're going to come in just a little bit. It goes back to what I was talking about with the in and the out. We're going to bring it in just a little bit and then go back out and hit it. And that 2 inches or whatever it is, we're going to eventually walk this thing out a little bit at a time, and he's going to square himself up. Okay, so we're going to start with going out. I don't mind if he faults out. You're caught on that. I don't mind if he faults out because this side's going to hit first. So here we go. We still have some trim work to do over here. So far so good. I'm liking everything I'm hearing. I'm liking everything I'm seeing. Okay, we almost have contact on this side. I'm going to check something real quick. So that's me stopping. I've got my wire loose on this side. I just want to make sure that he's not going to, I want him to behave. And I also want to feel my motor. So my motor is not touching the side of the slide room. Another thing these Schwinteks will do is if you get a new one, if you have to replace your Schwintek and you get a new one, you're going to notice that one side's going to have little steel rivets holding the H harness, and the other side's going to have little plastic rivets. So when these get put in, one side, I keep calling them the H-Column, okay? And that's, why do you call them the H-Column, Darren? Because that's what they call them, the H-Column. So the one side of the H-Column should be fixed, and the other side of the H-Column, they come with plastic rivets, and as the Schwintek works itself in and out, those plastic rivets are going to pop off and just go in a ditch somewhere. But it's possible that the slide room can kind of move a little bit if you visualize with me. It can move back and forth, but you'll want one side to be kind of rigid. If some of you might have a problem where the motor here is rubbing on the side of your slide box, and you'll see that if you bring your slide room all the way out and you look, and you'll see the scrape marks on the top. Usually that's an indication that these steel rivets, I'll call one the H harness like the anchor point, that might be an indication that those steel rivets have failed on you. And you kind of need to reestablish that, because then what's happening is your whole slide room can move forward or aft and start rubbing itself. So you might notice that it's binding out on this side and he's got really a lot of space on that side. So if you see that, then you need to get in, you need to take all your screws off the outside, take the whole H harness off, and then put your steel rivets in. When we show you the after show with where I'm going to bring you over to the shop and I'm going to show you the whole H harness thing, I'll point out these rivets, so remind me to do that. And when we show you the whole H harness, we'll show you the gib and where you lubricate these things, and it's going to be easier to show you that in the shop than it is here in the field, because I'll actually be able to show you in the shop what you're aiming for. Now we're going to lubricate this one while we're here. It's one of the things we're going to do for service for this customer, and maybe we'll carry you through on that. But when we get to the shop, I'm going to show you real nitty-gritty exactly where you need to lubricate these things and where these rivets are that I'm talking about. Okay, so having said that, what made me think of that is I wanted to make sure that my motor is not rubbing on the slide box, and it's not. Therefore, one of these sides, I don't know which one, is the anchor side. The other side's a free-floating side. Okay, does that make sense? So we're clear here. Good. I'm not going to be pinching no wire, so we're going to go out with it. He's going to hit first, and you'll hear it bind out, and we might even get an error code. So you see how he bounded out, and he went a little farther. Let's just see if we get a fault. I don't surprise if I get a fault. Yep, I got a fault. So let's count our fault codes. 1 green, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 codes. Okay, so I got 6, and 6 is motor short circuit. Okay, so basically I was expecting there to be a fault because I'm stressing out the motor on the left and the motor on the right is ready to go. So we had a number 6 code this time. Before it was number 8 code, now it's a number 6 code. So once we square this guy up, we won't get any codes. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on this. Okay, so now he won't go out anymore. So remember I was talking about in, out, in, out, in, out. If I go out, see, nothing. I can't go out at all. So Darren, how are you gonna make him go out? This is what I was talking about. I'm gonna come in just a touch. Okay, now I can go back out again because we cleared the fault. And I'm watching up here. Okay, and we're getting closer and closer. I'm not going to count the blinks, but we're going to come back in. I'm looking at evenness. Okay, we're good. Now at this point, I'm going to stop. Okay, and now everybody's happy. I'm going to run him out. I want to make sure I'm going to be watching this top edge. I'm just kind of see if he stops evenly, is what I'm looking at here. Perfect. Yeah. So he basically touched at the same time. So luckily our synchronization was not that far out. One time will do it. He might need 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know. So at this point, what we're going to do is, so this control module, we're going to leave our little tabs on. They're not hurting anybody. And if anybody ever needs to come back behind us and see this, you'll say, hey, this is the one that my works worked on. And we're going to put him back where he was. So originally we had to crawl under here with a slide room broken in and crawl in this small little void. Dakota, where are you at, my brother? And we're going to basically put him back right where he was right there. And so we'll basically do some dressing up. And so we're going to do some cleanup, put the covers on, all this, put our D-seal back on, tuck our wires back in. You don't need to see me doing all that. I want to save your time. So basically at this point, I'm going to stop here. You see the whole thing's working. Well, folks, what we've done is we've finished up that first RV, the customer satisfied, we've run his slide room in and out, and I'd mentioned in that first video, the one that you just finished watching, that we were going to talk about the Schwintek. And I think the best thing to do is let you know that we're going to talk about this, but we're going to close this video and we're going to start it in a new video where it'll be its own standalone video, if you will. And so up here above, I'm going to put a link to the video that's going to talk just specifically about this one, okay? So if this current video was helpful, please give us a thumb up. That really helps us. Subscribe to our channel. Consider joining us on Patreon. We're asking $5 a month to help us make these videos. That's how we support everybody that's helping us do this. As we always say, happy campers, say my of your work. So this is Darren in Port Angeles, Washington, signing off until the next video.